Welcome to Timeless Truths, where we walk through the Bible one chapter at a time and explore how these ancient words can still shape the way we live today. If you're just joining us, I'm glad you're here. And if you've been on this journey with me, welcome back. We've been following the life of Abram, soon to be Abraham, and we've seen how faith, obedience, and trust have carried him into the unknown. Today, we enter a pivotal moment in Scripture, Genesis Part 6, God's covenant with Abraham, covering chapters 15 through 17. This section marks a turning point, not just in Abram's personal journey, but an entire biblical narrative. God doesn't just speak promises. He seals them with a covenant. If you ever struggled with doubt, waited on God's timing, or wondered if God still sees you, this chapter will speak to your heart. Genesis 15 opens with a powerful moment. God speaks to Abram in a vision and says, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward." But Abram is honest. He responds with a question many of us have asked. What can you give me, God, since I remain childless? God doesn't rebuke Abram's doubt. Instead, he reaffirms his promise and takes Abram outside. Look up at the sky and count the stars, if you can. So shall your offspring be. Then we read one of the most important lines in Scripture. Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. This is the first time we see faith recognized as a key to a right relationship with God. Then something unexpected happens. God tells Abram to prepare a traditional covenant ceremony using animals split in two, a practice from that time that symbolized a binding agreement. But instead of having Abram walk between the pieces, God puts him into a deep sleep and passes through alone, in the form of a smoking firepot and blazing torch. This is deeply symbolic. It means that the fulfillment of the covenant rests entirely on God, not Abram. It's a promise based on grace, not performance. In Genesis 16, however, we see a setback. Abram and Sarai grow impatient. Sarai suggests Abram have a child with her servant, Hagar. Abram agrees, and Hagar gives birth to Ishmael. But jealousy, tension, and brokenness follow. Still, God doesn't abandon them. He cares for Hagar and blesses Ishmael. Then in Genesis 17, God reaffirms his covenant, but with even greater clarity. Abram is renamed Abraham, meaning father of many. Sarai becomes Sarah. God introduces circumcision as the physical sign of the covenant, an outward mark of an inward commitment. Here are the key takeaways from these chapters. God meets doubt with grace and turns belief into righteousness. His promises are sealed by his own faithfulness, not ours. When we take shortcuts to God's plan, we invite unnecessary pain. God still blesses. Even when we mess up, covenant relationship with God requires trust, identity, and commitment. Let's bring this into our lives today. Have you ever believed in something God promised you, but started to wonder if it would ever happen? Maybe it's a calling you haven't stepped into yet, a healing you prayed for, or a relationship you're trusting God to restore. Like Abram, we ask, "Lord, I believe, but where is it?" God doesn't dismiss our questions. He invites them. He takes us outside, figuratively or literally, and says, "Look again. I'm still working." Abram believed God, and it was credited as righteousness, not because he was perfect, but because he trusted. That's the same invitation extended to us today, to trust that God is who he says he is, and he will do what he said he'd do. But also, look at the mistake Abram and Sarai made in chapter 16. They tried to help God by taking control. And while their actions had consequences, God didn't abandon them. That's grace. Maybe you made a decision you now regret. Try to force something ahead of God's timing. The good news? His faithfulness doesn't expire. He still brings redemption, even in our detours. Finally, in chapter 17, God changes their names and introduces circumcision. It reminds us that when we walk with God, he redefines our identity. He calls us something new, and he asks us to live in a way that reflects that calling, both inwardly and outwardly. Let's open this up for discussion. Have you ever been in a season where you believed in God's promise, but felt like it was taking too long? Have you ever tried to rush God's plan and learned something in the process? Or maybe you've experienced a time when God reminded you that His covenant doesn't depend on your perfection, but on His faithfulness. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your story might help someone else trust again, wait with hope, or return to the path they've stepped away from. Thank you for joining me for this chapter of Genesis. If this message encouraged you, helped you see something differently, or gave you something to reflect on, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it. Timeless Truths is all about slowing down, asking honest questions, and letting Scripture guide our daily lives, not just our beliefs. So here's the truth I hope you carry with you today. God's promises are not fragile. They're not dependent on your strength or perfection. He made a covenant, and He intends to keep it. Even when you fall short, He walks through the pieces alone. Thanks again for being here. I look forward to continuing this journey with you in the next chapter.